All right, we will go ahead and get started. First off, I just wanted to say good afternoon and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this year's second pollution prevention webinar series, or second webinar of the pollution prevention webinar series. Today's webinar is entitled Protecting Tennessee's Natural Resources. So this webinar is being put on by the Tennessee Green Star Partnership Program in collaboration with TennGreen Land Conservancy, as you can see on the screen. My name is Caleb Powell, and I'm an environmental scientist for the Office of Sustainable Practices at TDEC, which stands for the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. And I will be hosting the webinar today for our wonderful speakers. So just a couple housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone is muted upon entry to reduce the amount of background noise, but if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, and we truly do hope that you do, come with some questions or comments. We find that these live webinars always, you get a lot out of the presentations, but we hope that stems some questions that hopefully our awesome speakers can answer for you. So I'm going to go ahead and send a chat now to everybody. You should see that over on your right hand side, and that's just telling you where the chat box is. And you'll notice where it says send to, there's a drop down box that you can click on, and then whenever you're asking a question or have a question or a comment, or maybe even there's an issue with your sound or your video or whatnot, you want to make sure that it either says all participants, host, make sure the word host is in it so that I'll be able to see that. And if it's something that you're having an issue with, make sure you just click host so that you and I can work through that issue and not disturb everybody else. But feel free to just flood that chat box with your questions. You don't have to wait to the end. As soon as a question comes to you, just send that through, and then I will make sure that our speakers get those questions, and then we'll do that at the end. Just to give an overview of what is going to be covered today, for 25 years, TennGreen Land Conservancy has been a champion for protecting Tennessee's rich landscapes so that people can, and nature can thrive. Hudson Pell, TennGreen's Executive Director, and Christie Henderson, TennGreen's Deputy Director, are going to be hosting this presentation on the benefits of land conservation strategies, in ways that industry leaders can engage in conservation through partnerships and collaboration. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on over to our wonderful speakers. Like I mentioned before, we have Hudson Pell, the Executive Director for TennGreen Land Conservancy, and then we've also got Christie Henderson, the Deputy Director for TennGreen. So I'll pass that on over, and I will stop talking. Thanks.
All right. Caleb, thank you so very much, and thank you to everyone who decided to join us today. We're so grateful for your interest in this work and protecting our environment, and acknowledge that it's been, at least for me, it's been a really busy week, and so being able to set aside an hour or so to learn about what TennGreen is and what we're doing and why it matters. I'm very grateful for all of you. My name is Hudson Pell, and I am the new Executive Director of TennGreen Land Conservancy. A little bit about me, I've actually been at TennGreen for more than 9 years, but new to this position. Prior to that, I've been working in the field of fundraising for nonprofits my entire career, and I have a master's degree in that, in fact, from Vanderbilt University. That's one of the reasons that I wanted to make sure that Christie Henderson, our Deputy Director, is here today, even though I'll be doing most of the talking. Christie has a natural resources background, and so if there are some really specific scientific questions, I'm going to ask her to be champion for those. So again, thank you so much, and I guess we'll just start with the beginning. So what is TennGreen Land Conservancy? Well, TennGreen is the oldest statewide land conservancy in Tennessee. We are accredited by the Land Trust Alliance and have earned a Platinum Seal of Transparency from Candid, which is the world's largest source of information on nonprofit organizations. I'm very particularly proud that in 2001, we were awarded Best Places to Work from the National Business Journal. And then there's a lot of confusion about this, but we are not a government entity. We do a lot of partnering with government agencies, but we ourselves are not one. We solely are funded through the generosity of our membership and our corporate sponsors. Our mission is to conserve land where people and nature can thrive, and we're about to get to the whys and the hows of all of that. So why is land conservation important? Why is the work that we do so important? It is important for a ton of reasons, and this is going to give you some information, really just scratching the surface on how conserving land, protecting it in perpetuity, benefits us as people, benefits the world we live in, benefits the future world that we live in. So first and foremost, our ecological system. An ecosystem can be a natural wilderness area, a suburban lake or a forest, or a heavily used area like a city. The more natural an ecosystem is, the more ecosystem services it provides, including cleansing water and air, pollinating crops and other important plants, and absorbing and detoxifying pollutants. Habitat connectivity is essential to the ecosystem's stability and sustainability. So TennGreen strives to conserve contiguous conservation corridors of diverse biological habitat to protect the rich biodiversity that we have in our state. And to talk about that, Tennessee's varied geological landscapes provide incredible habitat for a remarkable range of species. We are one of the most biologically diverse states in the U.S. We rank 13th in species diversity when it compares to all other states. However, if you remove all the states that touch an ocean, we are number one. And unfortunately, we are 10th in the country of all states in the percentage of species lost or at risk of extinction, and 7th in this country for the species already lost to extinction. Our ecosystems are under assault from various environmental aspects, including air and water pollution, irresponsible development, urban sprawl, and unsustainable farming and forestry practices. Our air and our water, okay, so, obviously you all know this, but not having enough water or having poor quality of water can cause disease, malnourishment, crop failure, and cost billions of dollars to our environment and damage. Today, 30% of Tennessee's streams cannot support aquatic wildlife, and 40% are not suitable for prolonged human contact, which, if that doesn't gross you out, I don't know what else could. The only way that we're going to be able to reverse the effects of this trend of our waters and being able to protect them is through both public education and increasing land protection. And so even more reasons. Okay, our health, carbon, economy. More bad news. Tennessee is the 45th healthiest state in the country. We're ranked 47th in obesity, 44th in cardiovascular death, 47th for diabetes. But we all know there's so many studies that demonstrate the benefit of outdoor recreation, nature walks to rock climbing, to trail running and whitewater kayaking. And we also know that our mental and physical well-being need nature. So recent studies have shown, and I really highly recommend the book, The Nature Fix, if you have not read it. Recent research has shown that time in nature can actually improve brain neuron connectivity, improve academic performance amongst students, and reduce stress and aggression levels. And as I've mentioned already, land conservation protects water and air quality and provides important habitat for pollinators that help that maintain our food systems and our food resources. Trapping carbon. Okay, forests absorb carbon. We all know this, and they store it within the trees, the undergrowth, the roots, the leaf layers, and the soils. So when enough carbon is absorbed, emissions from greenhouse gases are reduced, and the effects of climate change are a little bit lessened. Things like drought, extreme weather cycles. Trees are one of the most important solutions to addressing the effects of climate change. One tree can absorb up to 48 pounds of CO2 a year and approximately a ton by the time it reaches 4 years old. However, we're bad news again today. It takes one tree more than a year to offset the emissions from just 3 gallons of gasoline. So we need to protect all the trees we possibly can. And finally, and I've got a little bit more data about this too, but what's good for the environment is good for the economy. Protecting open spaces allow, well, first off, there's an increasing demand for recreation opportunities, publicly accessible opportunities across our state and beyond, and that leads to quite a lot of income for rural counties, rural places. In fact, okay, in 2016, a national survey of fishing, hunting, and wildlife-associated recreation revealed over 103 million U.S. residents 16 and older participated in wildlife recreation. And during that year, 35.8 million people fished, 1.5 million hunted, and 86 million participated in at least some type of wildlife watching activity. A huge portion of these activities in Tennessee take place on state-managed land, so that creates income from permits and boosts the state's economy. Additionally, these recreational opportunities that are in nature, hiking, camping, rock climbing, fishing, kayaking, they generate sales for local businesses through increased tourism, in addition to the income from permits and fees and taxes. This is from the 2018 Cumberland Region Tomorrow study. And I guess in 2018, $16 billion in annual from agricultural and forestry, providing nearly 200,000 jobs. $15 billion impact on property values, which helps generate an additional $118 million in local property tax revenue, and $1.3 billion annually in recreation, with an indirect benefit of $214 million in healthcare savings as a result of increased physical activity. So land is so important to conserve, not just right now, but for all future generations. So here are some of the threats that we face, especially to our biodiversity, which again in Tennessee is remarkable. Non-point source pollution, so runoff from farming practices and other types of fertilizers and things like that. Natural land cover conversion, so when you've got a forest or an open space area and it's paved over to be a road, or it is built on, becomes an apartment complex, losing our land. Urbanization, of course, kind of the same thing but different. That's something that we're paying close attention to, especially from here in Nashville, where our headquarters is located, being able to just keep an eye on where growth is headed, and especially how that overlays with our biodiverse resources. Unsustainable land management practices. We hope that everyone who has land is a great steward of the land that they have, but that's not always the case, and I think we all know that. And then in Tennessee, we have a lack of conservation funding. I'm delighted that in the current budget, in its current form, the state budget does include a significant investment in TDEC and the Parks Department, and including a $30 million contribution for the Heritage Conservation Trust Fund, which is an excellent way to have access to funds that are typically matched in a certain way, but help us be able to do more and conserve more land, because as we know, land's not getting less expensive. So a lack of conservation funding is a real threat. This is great information, and this is from the American Farmland Trust. So remember, they're really specifically looking at farmland, but the 2016 to 2040 sort of business as usual. So if we keep going the same way we're going now, which is not more aggressive, it's the same thing, it's not less land conservation or anything, Tennesseans will pave over, fragment, or compromise over 1 million acres of farmland, 1 million. 52% of this will occur on what they consider to be Tennessee's best land. And that's the equivalent to losing nearly 9,000 farms, $258 million in farm output and almost 15,000 jobs. That's incredible. So yet again, we have to act now. We obviously know we don't have time to wait. This mission is one of the most urgent there is, and it is just so completely vital. So that's sort of the why we do what we do, the why our members believe in us and support us, the reason our folks get out of bed and come into work every day. So here's the how. We have 3 primary conservation strategies at TennGreen. The first is conservation easements. We also acquire land, and then we assist with restoration and enhancement projects on really important landscapes. So I'll go into a bit detail of all of those. A conservation easement is a voluntary legal agreement that permanently limits the use of land in order to protect its conservation values. Conservation easements, they can be donated, they can be purchased. We've actually completed 2 of those in our 25-year history very, very recently. Now, I will say it's not that we can do that for every property. We have to be able to secure the funding, and it has to be of high conservation value. But I was thrilled, one of our recent conservation easements in the sort of Swanee area, about 600 acres of land supported by the Open Space Institute. The Department of the Interior of the United States sent out an email, and we were featured. That particular project was featured. And I'll tell you, I first got the email and I thought, oh, this is local spotlight. It's just maybe for Tennesseans or something. But someone in Oregon read that email and sent our conservation easement donor a thank you letter. So it's really remarkable and such an incredible project. Okay, back to this. So the restrictions have to be things that TennGreen can enforce in the future, and that is primarily 3 things. Subdivision, meaning that if you have a 100-acre farm, we can allow 1 or 2 subdivisions, but ultimately it can never be divided into 200 half-acre lots for a neighborhood or something along those lines. Residential development, meaning that, and it says residential, but truly it just means development. We tailor every single conservation easement to the wishes of the landowners, and so maybe you can build 1 or 2 structures, maybe a barn, maybe it's more about just ensuring that the current building envelopes are maintained, but you can do anything you want in there, or you can say something like no building can be over 2 stories because you want to protect the view shed that you're trying to protect, whatever the value is, that conservation value. And then also, if you have the right to these natural resources like minerals and timber, we can work to put limitations on their extraction in the future. So one easement that we have, and I believe that's this picture right here on this screen, they want absolutely nothing to change ever. But some conservation easements also will say, yes, you can timber the property, but it needs to be done in a sustainable way. And so there will be a sustainable timber management plan created by a certified forester. And then forever, that is what we will maintain. It's a really amazing nonprofit here because our work is forever. So there are a lot of benefits to doing conservation easements. You might say, why would a landowner ever do this? Well, there's a lot of reasons. For many people, we find that it really gives them a peace of mind for their sense of place. They really appreciate and know what it is that they have, and they want to ensure that it's protected. One of the great things about an easement is that you still have the land. You still own the land. You can still use it as long as it doesn't go counter to one of those things. If you're farming the land, you can still farm it. If you're using it as like a hunting space or a recreation space, you can continue to do that too. It's your property. When you're finished with the land, whether that be through a sale or a bequest, it transfers, and the easement stays with the land in perpetuity forever, again, forever. And then there's also potential tax benefits. And I am not an accountant, so I'm not going to get into that, but we have some people we can recommend. If this is something that would interest you or something you'd like to learn more about, we can certainly talk a little bit more in depth about those tax benefits. All right, land acquisition. Okay, so this is a really fun one too. This is what I always say in my nutshell. What do? We buy land to make parks. Obviously, we do a lot more, but in a nutshell, we buy land to make parks. We work with local groups, we work with state groups, we work with federal partners. We work with community groups. If there is a special place and it needs to be either protected with an easement or acquired, you know, we can help with that. We can help fundraise. We can help do the actual transactions as well, and that is what Christie is a genius at. Just some examples of the various places that we partnered. We have worked with TDEC a lot, especially the Department of Parks, but also state natural areas. And I'm really pleased. We just announced last week a 15-acre addition to Cedars of Lebanon State Natural Area, which is an incredibly remarkable and unique place here in Tennessee with species that only exist here in Tennessee, like the coneflower. And so we were able to protect that really sensitive habitat, donate it to the State Natural Areas Program, and that protects the park boundary as well, or extends the park boundary and protects those rare species. We've also partnered with TWRA, the National Park Service, and many more agencies. We also partner a lot with local agencies or governments. So, for example, Metro Parks. We have done a handful of projects, again, here in the, I should say National Metro Parks, here in the Nashville area. But Shelby, Fayette County, we helped establish and have a conservation easement on the Lincoln County, Fayetteville, Lincoln County, that was it. We created, in partnership, the very first county park in Lincoln County, and it's protected by an easement. And then we also partner extensively with other nonprofits, and that's something I'm really proud of. We work a lot with the Conservation Fund and the Nature Conservancy. We also work with smaller regional land trusts like the Wolf River Conservancy, or Swan Conservation Trust, or the South Cumberland Regional Land Trust, or Tennessee Citizens for Wilderness Planning, and all kinds of other groups. We all know that partnering together makes these projects possible, and there's no reason to occupy a vacuum, to work inside of a vacuum, if we all have a shared mission. And so just a couple of examples of some of our acquisitions. Cummins Falls, that is one of our probably more popular sites that we protected. It was for sale. Cummins Falls in its entirety was for sale. There were developers with plans to place home sites all along the ridges all the way up to the waterfall. And so TennGreen and their board members, and this predates me, but I'm still proud of it, stood in the rain on a cold day at the auction to buy Cummins Falls, raising their paddles up and down, and we helped acquire it. A lot of fundraising went into that one. We helped acquire it and then give it to the state, and now it is the 54th state park in Tennessee, and one that is very well beloved. We've also expanded Rock Island State Park. We've done a decent amount of work in Fiery Gizzard. We are creating a massive park right outside of Memphis, technically, in West Memphis, Arkansas, 1,500 acres, wetland restoration. We're doing it in partnership with Ducks Unlimited and the Big River Park Conservancy. And when that project is said and done, it is going to be an absolute world-class, remarkable park for all of Memphians. And it's really remarkable, particularly because it is right across the Mississippi River from downtown Memphis. So the view is spectacular, you know, from both sides, I guess you can say. We're protecting the view from the Bass Pyramid rooftop, and we're also protecting and helping really restore the waters and the wetlands that used to be there, because it's all in agricultural land at the moment. But when you're going to walk across the pedestrian bridge, you're going to get off, maybe you cycle, and you'll be able to see the entire downtown Memphis skyline. It's going to be incredible. We're going to have a big old party when that one's done, so come and join us. What else? We've also done expanded lands at Fiery Gizzard, protected Virgin Falls, open Irwin fish hatcheries. We truly are statewide. We've done 2 expansion projects at the Irwin Fish Hatchery, which is a great little place. I recommend going on a tour if you get a chance. It's very cool. So we really look for, one key thing that TennGreen does is we look to, well, I should say what we don't do. What TennGreen does not want to do is hold land long-term. And so some of our conservation decisions, or a pretty major conservation decision, always comes down to, do we have an agency or a partner in this project that will indeed hold onto this land in the long term? So that is something I kind of want to put out there, that a lot of our acquisitions are geared towards knowing where the land will finally be ownership of, because at this point in time, it will not be TennGreen. That doesn't mean that we can't hold on to it for a couple of years while other things are working in the background. But we always want to have an exit strategy for those lands, and especially one that involves public access and public recreation. And then the other thing we really look at are areas of really high conservation importance. So one of the projects that we're focused on right now is helping to acquire land on the Cumberland Plateau that will become the Cumberland Trail when all is said and done. So the Cumberland Trail is about 95% acquired. We've still got the other 5% to go. But the Cumberland Plateau, being such an extraordinary natural place, not only can we create this amazing linear park that will rival the ATs, and again, let's go back to the economic impact that will be affecting those more rural communities in Tennessee, but we're preserving all of the natural biodiverse habitat along the way, doing it well. Okay, and then finally, the third thing that we do is we assist with restoration, oh my goodness. So when it's feasible, we will work with landowners and house projects on their properties or our property to restore and enhance the natural features that are there. So what we've done in the past is we've done hemlock treatment for the woolly adelgid. We do invasive species removal, and we do other land management practices such as prescribed ferns or replanting of native grasses, or whatever is really the most appropriate for that landscape. We've received a 2,000-acre land donation a couple of years ago, and we're doing a massive project funded by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, we call it NFWIP. And that's a really exciting project for us, but we have been able to do a lot of burning, and we're partnering with the Southeast Grasslands Institute, and we're also partnering with Austin Peay. And so Austin Peay's biology department will go out and do a bunch of tests on site, and so it's this wonderful community engagement property and a process that these students are able to do a bunch of research on this land that we are also protecting and conserving. Love it. So I did want to talk a little bit about corporate partnerships, because as I mentioned, we're a small nonprofit. We've got about 12 people on our staff, but we have this big old statewide mission, and we do a lot in partnership with corporations all across the state. This is one example of a partnership project that we've done. This is the Loosahatchee Mitigation Bank. So this is in the Memphis area. I believe it is still in Shelby County. It is right there. It says it on the screen. My apologies. 267 acres. So to qualify for a mitigation bank project, you have to have a conservation easement. That's what the Corps is requiring. So we are able to hold a conservation easement on those 267 acres right on the Loosahatchee River, while InSafe, who's our partner, is doing all of the restoration work, and then they are the ones that are utilizing the mitigation bank credit program. So again, this is kind of where my technical knowledge starts to slip, and if you have any questions about that process, we'd love to talk to you. Christie is definitely going to be a better resource for that. Here's another partnership, Bongo Java. If you are in Nashville, I'm sure you know about Bongo, Fido, all of their products. And so they've been a great partner with TennGreen for a long time. In fact, a couple of years ago, we had a big fundraising party, and they donated all of the desserts, and I've never in my life seen something so beautiful. And I mean that. It was stunning, beautiful. But this is a program I really love that we do with them, where they created their own blend for us. They're calling it 10 for 10. And so 10% of all of the purchases of this particular kind of coffee come to TennGreen. So those are very different ways that people partner with our organization from a corporate perspective, but we're grateful for both of them because they both help us conserve land where people and nature can thrive. And then, of course, I would just be kicking myself if I didn't get a chance to talk about my hackathon, our hackathon. And it's going on right now. There's still time to sign up, but you might be a little behind on your miles. You have to do quite a bit of hiking at this point to catch up, perhaps. But this is our fundraiser. This is our annual signature fundraiser. This is the third year of the hackathon, and it is a virtually managed competition where people get outside and they hike or they cycle or they trail run or they paddle. And then we get partners like REI, Patagonia, some of Cumberland Transit, great groups like that, and they donate prizes to us. So it's kind of like a race where you go out and you ask your friends and family to fundraise on your behalf, and we also get a lot of corporate sponsors, and I'll come back to that in a second. But it's a really fun event, a really, really fun event, and it's going on right now. So if you're interested, again, love to talk more about it. And so kind of finally, I moved through this a little faster than I expected. Here are ways that we would love to engage with the corporate community or anybody truly. So volunteering. We have properties that need cleanup. We have invasive species. We've got all kinds of opportunities that if you all would want to engage your employees, put together a team, come on out and help us clean up Laughlin Springs Park here in Nashville. It needs a lot of love. Or not us. You know, that's the other thing. There's a lot of groups in town that do, I should say in town, across the state, that do really good work and really need your support. And so obviously, I'm a fundraiser by trade. We all appreciate your donations. We also appreciate your gifts of time, very much so, and skills and knowledge, all of those things. Again, back to the hackathon, I just love it so much. I'm really thrilled that we won a big award for it for revenue development last fall. And we love to have corporate participants, corporate teams. One of our sponsors this year, Atmos Energy, they have 5 offices building teams, and they're all competing against each other. And their sponsors, they don't need to raise any money. They donated, and so, you know, that's not a thing. But they've got teams, they've got people out there rock climbing and cycling and doing all these wonderful adventures, and they're really making a game of it. So the hackathon, it's team building, it's wellness, it's a commitment to the environment, and it's just a lot of fun. I mean, who needs a reason to go outside? Look at how beautiful it is today. And again, thank you all for taking your time and not being outside and joining this presentation. If you're interested in learning more about the hackathon, again, I'd love to talk to you about it. And then finally, being an ambassador for our environment. When we say the voiceless need our voice, you know, our flora, our fauna, our biodiversity, it's only us that can protect them. So whether or not you are a conservationist or we really need more people being able to talk proudly and passionately about the natural resources we have, why they matter, why they are so at risk. And just being a voice for the voiceless, like we said. So that's all I have, and I would love to take your questions. Between Christie and I, I'm pretty sure we can answer them, and if not, we'll at least be able to direct you in a place that may have more information. So that's my presentation. Thank you for your time.
Alice, thank you so much for the work that you do and for taking time, like you mentioned before, just to talk about all the great stuff that TennGreen has going on. And, you know, I love the presentations that sort of lay it out as like the why, the how, you know, and so very interesting presentation. Really enjoyed that. I have a couple questions that I wanted to ask. So I don't know, you guys can choose who would be best suited to answer these. So first I got David, and I'm going to mess up your last name, David. So, but he put, this just might be a comment. He put, let's see, oh, here we go. Nature serve biodiversity in focus, and then sent me the link to it. So I've been looking over this a little bit. And then just put in the first report of its kind, biodiversity in focus, United States edition reveals an alarming conclusion. 34% of plants and 40% of animals are at risk of extinction, and 41% of ecosystems are at a risk of range-wide collapse. So, and then gave the link to that report and to natureserve.org. So give that a look, and I think I'll go ahead and just put that link to all participants. So if everybody wants to check that out, that's from David. Thanks for putting that in there. So that was not really a question, but more of a comment. And then another question that came up, could you share some examples of how TennGreen has partnered with manufacturing facilities, if you have?
You know, I don't know. To the best of my ability, I do not remember having done any sort of manufacturing facilities before. Like, having said that, I mean, I guess how maybe you would define different kinds of partnership. Christie, do you have any ideas?
No, I agree. I don't have any historic examples, but I'll say that we are in the middle of our strategic planning process, and a big part of one of the goals of that is looking at stewarding our current partnerships and really expanding future partnerships. And so looking at maybe what for us has been non-traditional partners is something that I think we're really going to be thinking about. So the more, if anybody on this call has any ideas of how we could engage those groups in a more meaningful way, that's something that we just, staff-wise, I don't think have historically had that experience to build off of, but it's a direction we definitely want to go. And yeah, kind of like Alice said, most of our partnerships beyond nonprofit or state agencies or those kind of things have been historically sponsorships or engagement through volunteer efforts and hackathon participation and those kind of things. And we definitely want to build upon those and expand on those partnerships.
Yeah, thanks. And so with our Tennessee Green Star Partnership Program, we work with manufacturers around the state. And so I'm sure this is something that, you know, there's a lot of our Green Star partners on this webinar, and then we'll also be sending this out as a resource. So excited to see the opportunity there. And I wanted to say, I think, didn't you guys work with Nucor Steel in Memphis? I think that was with the Ducks Unlimited on the big river park that you talked about. Nucor is one of our newest Green Star partner members, and so I thought they had said something about working with you guys, but I couldn't remember.
It's very, very possible that they made a donation towards that effort. It's a big effort, and I think a lot of people are really excited about it. Yeah,
definitely. And so we had another question. It sort of goes along the lines of, you know, with manufacturing. So, you know, I understand if you've sort of already answered that, but the question was, what about specifically working with manufacturers on conservation easements? And so maybe we could sort of move that question to, what does it look like to work with you guys on conservation easements?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and I'm going to toss it over to Christie again.
Yes, so I'll start with saying that each conservation easement is individually tailored towards the landowner. So every conservation easement, like every child, is unique, and they have their own nuances. And really, so if you say you were a manufacturer and you had a large facility, but you also had a large amount of green space that you weren't planning on developing, that you wanted to see preserved in some way, basically where you would start is just reaching out to me or someone at TennGreen and say you're interested in chatting about this potential conservation easement project with us. And really what we're looking for in those kind of projects is some risk to the property, so knowing that it could be developed or it could be impacted in some way and transition from, we'll say, natural forest or something into non-natural uses. And what we can do is just work with whichever company or firm who's interested in the conservation easement, and we would really just kind of hammer out we call them rights and restrictions. So it's basically a really strong legal document, and it's very specific on, you can put, as examples, you can have trails out here, you can have a picnic shelter here, or XYZ on this property, but you're not allowed to build a hotel, develop a bunch of homes, break it into a bunch of pieces, cut all the trees, that kind of thing. So the conversation is sort of just negotiation in the nicest way, but it's sort of a negotiation of like, what do you want to do and what do we need to do to accomplish the best conservation goal? And once we sort of figure that out, you're happy with it, we're happy with it, our board has given us the green light to move forward. Really the next steps are just getting a boundary survey so we know where the easement is, and then you'll want an appraisal most likely, because although a company and an individual might be putting a conservation easement on their land out of the good of their heart, there's also a financial component of a write-off, so that would be an important thing to contemplate amongst your financial capacity and what you need. And I'll give an example. It's not really a conservation easement, but just an example I'll give on, we are in the early stages of chatting with a hospital about some surplus land they own. It's about 60 acres or so, and they are interested in, they don't need it, they are interested in being maybe a park or something, but they're really looking at it from the financial and community benefits, their financial benefits and the community benefits of a park. And so for them right now, it's really kind of looking at their bottom line with their folks and making sure that donating this property, which is what they're talking about, is the right fit. And so usually with those bigger corporations, it needs to be a conversation at the company level on, is this the direction we want to go? How's the financial side of it? And how is the community benefit all worthwhile? And then we can have the early conversations, but that's an important question and consideration to have, is from the company perspective of like what the benefits are and if it's the direction you want to go. That was a very long answer, I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate it. I think that was a good way. An example is always a good way of teaching, in my opinion. So this question is probably for both of you. It's a little less technical, more fun. It says, do you have a favorite piece of property that you all have protected in your time at TennGreen, and then why does that one stick out to you? So I guess we can start with Alex, if you want to talk about yours, and then Christie, you can talk about yours.
Oh, that's a really tough one. I think I'm going to answer with two, and there's probably no good reason for that. But the Westmead Waterfall, which is here in Nashville, it's about 4 acres. Lower your expectations before you go. It is a really neat little pocket park. Go after it rains, because it won't look like a waterfall if you go after a few days of sunny weather. But it was my first project at TennGreen, and I got to work with a bunch of great people to fundraise for it and acquire it, and have a little gathering with the mayor and all the fun stuff. And so that one's always going to be just sort of a warm part of my heart. But I got to say, I love Rock Island State Park. I think it's one of my all-time favorite parks. And so when we were able to expand it, the very first ever expansion, there are about 40 acres adjacent to the sandy beach. They were for sale. The for sale sign said, park views, water views, and the rangers and the park managers and everyone got kind of like upset. And so we ended up purchasing it. And the intention is, this was a couple of years ago, I think COVID kind of slowed everything down, but they're going to take those additional 40 acres and they're going to create some primitive campsites, because Rock Island is a world-class whitewater rafting destination, or whitewater paddling, I guess I should say. The paddlers were really accomplished, love to play in the water underneath the Twin Falls. And they need a place for those folks to stay. You can rent a cabin, but they really want just more basic platforms and fire pits. So for scouting troops, for the kayakers, for more rustic groups who want to be outside. So one day, there will be an awesome primitive campsite protecting this 40 acres and most importantly protecting the view shed from Sandy Beach. So that was a really fun one too. So I don't know, and I also love Black Mountain, but that was way before my time. So I had 3, I guess, sorry.
And I guess I'll stick with one, but like I said, it's sort of the child thing where you don't want the other projects to hear that you picked a different one. But because they're all really exciting and fun. But I think for me, sort of like Alice's idea of an early project. I'm from Henderson, which is in Chester County. And as a kid, I grew up with, my dad was a wildlife biologist. And so we would go out to this area called Toll Bottom. And at the time, my dad was involved with frog surveys. And so we'd go and we'd sit in the car, and on spring days like this evening, we would sit outside and listen to frogs and write down what we hear. And we did that for years in a row. And there was this one site that was along the South Fork of the Forked-Deer at Toll Bottom that I just remember always going to when I was a kid. And so in 2013, when I had been at TennGreen for, I guess, about a year probably, 300 acres was for sale at auction. And it was right in Toll Bottom, right where I used to sit as a kid and listen to frogs, wetland habitat all along the Forked-Deer. And so TennGreen was luckily able to move quickly because as a nonprofit, that's one of our biggest things is our nimbleness. So we were able to acquire the property at auction, which was me and my boss online, just adding more money in. So that was fascinating. And then we were able to acquire it, get it into the wildlife agency's hands, and it has become the Toll Bottom Wildlife Management Area that went from 300 acres in 2013 to over 1,000 acres in, I think, 6 or 7 different acquisitions over time. So I'm excited to see how that'll continue to grow, and it's not too far from Pinson Mounds, so if they can just keep buying land, and then in the long term, eventually maybe reset some of the meanders of that river and get it back to a more natural flowing stream that would have been pre-channelization days. So that one's just meaningful for my my personal history with the area, but also it has a large scope once it gets protected, and conservation's forever. So got a long future ahead of itself.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, I knew that question would be sort of hard. Working for TDEC, people a lot of times will ask me what's my favorite state park, and that's impossible. It's very similar, I'm sure, to how you were feeling whenever I asked you that question. So appreciate the insight. We had just one last comment that said, appreciate TennGreen's help in protecting our biodiversity. So
thank you.
I don't see any more questions, but I just wanted to echo that comment that we just appreciate what TennGreen does for biodiversity, for Tennessee's natural areas, for our state parks. You know, I mean, the list goes on and on. So super appreciative of the work that both of you do and that TennGreen's done for years and years and years. So if there's no more questions, then I'd like to go ahead and thank both of our speakers again for taking time to inform us on the great work that they do. I'd like to also thank everyone that registered and was a part of the webinar audience. Couldn't do these webinars without an audience. So like it was mentioned at the very beginning of this is our second of 4 pollution prevention webinars that are going to be happening this year. So stay tuned and be on the lookout for registration links and webinar invitations for our next one. This webinar has been recorded, and the presentation slides along with the recording link will be on our website, but it also will be sent out to everyone that registered and attended the webinar. If you have any further questions, or if you think about something that you wish that you would have asked Alice or Christie, feel free to send me an email at caleb.powell@tn.gov, and then I can work on getting that answered and sent back out to you. But like I said, by the end of the week, we will have a follow-up email sent out, and just thank everyone again for being a part of it. Have a great rest of the week.